Henry Cavill is a man that no longer needs an introduction. As soon as we say his name, vivid images of him playing Clark Kent, aka Superman, or the drunk genius Sherlock Holmes might erupt into your mind. Before he donned the cape to play everyone's favorite superhero, Cavill was Evan Marshall, a paramedic hunting an undead Nazi in the 2009 movie Blood Creek. Blood Creek, also known as Town Creek, is a criminally underrated horror flick that today, we at Marvelous Videos are going to explore, so sit back and tighten your seatbelts as we take you on this horrific ride. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Necromancing Nazis. A creepy voiceover tells us that Adolf Hitler, during his Nazi regime, got obsessed with the occult, and he sent out many of his men to look for Nordic runes in America, believing they would reveal the secret of immortality to him. The movie begins in 1936 on an American farm owned by Otto Wollner, who tends to the farm, his horses and pigs, with his wife, son, and daughter. Otto receives a letter from the Nazi Party, requesting him to host Herr Richard Wirth, who intends to conduct research in the area, in exchange for a gratuity. Otto's wife is not so sure about the idea, and asks him to think it through, but their son Carl points out the $150 they sent with the letter, which amounts to somewhere around $3,380 by today's standards. Otto, compelled by money, agrees. Soon, Richard Wirth, portrayed by the dashing Michael Fassbender, makes his arrival. Mrs. Wollner isn't very happy with their house guest, but there isn't much she can do. Meanwhile, Wirth tells Otto about Germany's Viking ancestry. He inquires about a Nordic rune that the Wollners had found. Surprised that Wirth knows about it, Otto tells him that the rune is in the farm's basement. The next day, Wirth finds Lise crying over her dead pigeon, and using the writings on the runes, he revives the pigeon. Soon, Wirth begins to use the rune for evil, and employs Lise as his personal assistant. Lise begins to understand that Wirth is up to no good, and using other runes, she traps him in the basement. Immortality never comes without a price, and in Blood Creek, that price is horrific. The usage of the runes turns Wirth into a weird zombie-vampire combination, where his body is rotting around him and he needs flesh blood to stay alive and maintain his strength. Although the Wollners trap Wirth, Wirth too has them as their captives, as they can't leave the farm. They have to constantly feed Wirth with fresh blood. To do this, they trap anyone who happens across their farm. In exchange, Wirth preserves their age, making sure that time has no effect on them. The problems of the paramedic. Cut to the present time, we see Evan Marshall, a paramedic, lead a hard-knock life. After a 15-hour shift, he checks up on his aged, sick father, who rebukes Evan for the death of his brother Victor. His day hasn't ended yet, as he receives calls from his nephews, who are eager to see him. After he takes his nephews trick-or-treating, his sister-in-law Barb yells at him for taking the boys to their father's graveyard. This is when he finds out that Victor isn't actually dead. He'd gone missing after a camping trip, and no one heard from him or had any clue where he was for the past 2 years. Evan, in an attempt to get closure, had put up a stone in the graveyard. That night, Victor suddenly shows up at Evan's house, telling him that he had escaped from his kidnappers, and they were going back for revenge. The brothers, armed with guns, head to the farm from which Victor had escaped. Evan sees a young girl with her brother outside, and tells Victor that he's not sure if he can take down a family. Victor shows him the scars his abductors gave him, and that's more than enough to convince Evan. They shoot down the brother outside and run in, taking the old woman and the girl hostage. Soon, their father, who had gone to the market, joins them. That's when the audience realizes that the brothers have walked into the Nazi necromancer's lair. Lise angrily scolds them about the mistake they're making, while Victor demands them to tell him where Wirth is. Evan, still confused about all this, opens a black container, where he sees a severely wounded man tied. He frees him and they all lock themselves inside the house. Lise tells them that Wirth cannot enter the house, as they painted the runes on all the doors and windows of the house. Lise and Otto tell the brothers how Wirth had tortured Lise first, but she had used the knowledge of the runes that she had learned from Wirth's books to trap him. But they were also forced to sacrifice anyone who sauntered onto the farm as food to Wirth. Lise explains that it was for the greater good, as Wirth would have done more damage if he was let out. Lise also shows them the weapons she had made by carving the bones of Wirth's dead kinsmen. They were the only weapons that worked against Wirth, and she had hung all the bones she could find of Wirth's ancestors. Taking on the Nazi. As night approaches, Wirth comes out of his enclosure and, having no blood to feed on, attacks one of the horses. The horse's pupil turns white and it rushes inside the house, breaking a window as the runes have no effect on it. It grabs hold of the man that Evan rescued and takes him to Wirth. As Wirth begins feeding on his blood, Lise asks Evan to shoot the man, as Wirth can't drink blood from dead bodies. Meanwhile, Victor, who's hell-bent on getting revenge against the zombie vampire Nazi, makes an armor out of some bones Lees had collected and sets out to fight him. Although Worth can't hurt Victor because of the bones, he manages to subdue him. Evan gets a brilliant idea to kill Worth and asks Lees to help him. Together, they burn the bones of Worth's kinsman. Lees then ties Evan in the container and cuts him for Worth to feed. But before they call Worth, she adds the ashes of the bones to his blood. Worth excitedly comes to feed on Evan, but he's poisoned by the ashes. Using the moment he's disarmed to attack, Victor uses a barbed wire as a weapon and kills him. With Worth's death, the Woolners rapidly begin aging. Evan asks Lees if there's anything he can do for her, and she requests him to stay by her side till she dies. In her last moments, Lees tells Evan that SS leader Heinrich Himmler had sent a total of 9 Nazis to research runes in America. A happy ending? Victor returns to his home where a party is thrown in his honor. He's reunited with his wife and kids. Evan, on the other hand, marks down all the farms where runes had been found, and armed with a gun for his protection and a photo of Lees from the 1940s for his motivation, sets out to kill all the undead Nazis. Although it's a happy ending for Victor, we're not so sure what will happen to Evan. But if the filmmakers are interested in making a sequel or two, we will be seated at our nearest theaters. What did we think about it? Directed by Joel Schumacher, who's known for his Batman movies, Blood Creek has an interesting take on the Nazi problem in America. Although there have not been any news reports on undead Nazis, we're sure aware of all the Nazis that had escaped to America and were living under pseudonyms to avoid getting prosecuted for their crimes. The casting is undoubtedly superior with Dominic Purcell as Victor, a war-hardened veteran with nothing but revenge on his mind, and Henry Cavill as Evan, a little brother coping with the loss of his brother and the disapproval of his father. Their bromance is strong and will definitely push you to root for them. Michael Fassbender does an awesome job playing the creepy Nazi, even though he hardly gets any dialogue after the prelude in the beginning. One thing we do recommend that you get before turning this movie on is a hard stomach. Filled with blood and gore, the movie is not for those who get queasy easily. Make sure you're not easily affected by motion sickness either, as the camera is so shaky that it'll make you throw up. That's one of the main problems of the movie, along with the really bad CGI. Although some people found major problems with the script, we think it was fast-paced and did justice to the story. A fun fact about Blood Creek is that many of the actors in this movie have played a minor role in superhero movies. We already told you that Cavill was Superman, and you are all probably aware that Fassbender plays Magneto, the mutant with magnetic superpowers in the X-Men movies. Lynn Collins, who plays Barb, took on the role of Kayla Silver Fox for X-Men Origins Wolverine, while Dominic Purcell was Dracula, the main antagonist in the 2004 Blade movie. It's a small superpowered world after all. Marvelous verdict. Blood Creek was unfortunately cursed with a limited theatrical release, which is probably why it evaded mainstream horror movie fans. But now that we've explored this movie, we do hope that it's earned a spot during your next binge session. What kind of creature do you think Worth is? Watch the movie and let us know in the comments. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.